And welcome into the MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. Appreciate you guys joining us on a Wednesday evening. Busy day today for us here at the Upside. Got some stuff that we got made for you guys to prepare for the winter meeting. So we got some new new ways we're going to show you guys some information. So keep your eyes peeled for when we bring that to you live next week. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And let's get into the headlines. I have a very strong suspicion I'm only going to be able to lead this show for a few more days talking about Juan Soto. Why is that? It's not because a deal is imminent, but I do believe we will have a deal for Juan Soto. I was hoping it would last until the winter meetings and possibly dominate the news. Probably Tuesday is what my expectation was, but it sounds like the market is getting further along than what I had originally hoped, and we may actually have him sign before Sunday. So make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe, and we will break the news for you guys live here at the Upside. Now, where does everything stand right now? We know 4 teams have made multiple offers to his camp. The Dodgers are saying, hey, keep us in your thoughts. Circle back to us when you're ready to, get down to the final nitty-gritty. But the 4 teams, no surprises, Yankees, Mets, Red Sox, Blue Jays. Those are the 4 teams that have multiple offers out there to Juan Soto's camp already, and the bidding is continuing. They've already gotten all the visits out of the way. They did that before Thanksgiving. They got all the offers in from every team that was interested. That came last week with Thanksgiving. Now we're getting down to the paring it down. Which teams does he actually want to sign for? What teams are actually serious about the bidding? Those kinds of things. But sounds like teams like the Philadelphia Phillies never actually met with Juan Soto's camp and have not submitted an offer. So it doesn't look like this will be a dark horse type of signing here. It seems like it's going to come down to one of those 4, possibly the 5th being the LA Dodgers. A couple of reporters are out there saying that they're not necessarily totally in the market for Juan Soto, but if Juan Soto says, hey, that's the place I want to be, they're still open to having that happen. So we'll see what happens here, but the news around Juan Soto is that things are starting to crystallize around his camp as to where the bidding is going, what teams he's kind of deciding between, and we could have a decision before we get to the winter meetings. Let us know in the comment section where you think he signs. Industry expectation is the highest dollar is going to be coming from the Toronto Blue Jays. Red Sox already made the move yesterday to make an addition, bringing in Aroldis Chapman. They're looking for a frontline starting pitcher and a hitter to add to that lineup as well, possibly even trade for Nolan Arenado. That would be the Red Sox acting well like the Red Sox used to act back when they competed with the evil empire New York Yankees. They haven't done so in about 10 years now. In fact, they've parceled off much of their productive pieces. Xander Bogaerts, Mookie Betts, etc. And, Rafi Devers is really the only stalwart there. They've got a couple of good young players, and they got some more young talent coming. Maybe they just see this as the next wave of contention for the Red Sox. But the Red Sox were never a wave of contention team. They were always there to be competing 1A, 1B with the Yankees at the top of that division, and we're every year perennially in that World Series contender conversation. They haven't been that for a while now, and I'm very glad to see them getting back into gear and getting rid of this mentality that they needed to operate on a shoestring payroll like the A's and Rays that they seem to so admire. Seems like they might finally be coming out of that tailspin of a decision from their ownership group. So good on the Red Sox for at least be willing to invest in it. But of course, there are still 3 other serious contenders, and a 4th if you consider the Dodgers for Juan Soto's services. We'll talk a little bit about the Yankees first. Yankees, of course, they have Aaron Judge. He's the aircraft carrier absolutely in that lineup. But that lineup was so devoid of talent around the All-Star break anyway that they went out and made some additional moves. Jazz Chisholm, etc. And they've gotten some decent Major League average production out of some of those pieces that they brought in since the trades. However, Juan Soto was a huge piece of that lineup, a huge piece of protection for Aaron Judge in that lineup. Not everything had to go through Aaron Judge all the time. Without him, Yankees tell you, hey, Aaron Judge is our centerpiece, but we have so much talent around him. We're still going to be competitive in the AL East. We're still going to be a World Series contender. What are y'all smoking? I mean, no Juan Soto, you're not going to be able to make a move big enough to fill the hole that he would leave in that lineup. I'm sorry. You might be able to add a pitcher here, a frontline starter, maybe be able to add an Anthony Santander, but you're telling me Juan Soto was equal to that in your lineup right now? Juan Soto had that big of an impact. I don't think there's a free agent on the board that the New York Yankees they could pivot to be able to fill that hole. So they're going to have to go the multiple free agent approach, and understandably they could with the money that they would save on Soto, sure. But we're talking about the New York Yankees. This is a team that was so heavily dominated in that lineup by Aaron Judge and Juan Soto. I would expect them to be, if I were the Yankees, I'd be pulling out all the stops to try to retain him. Ultimately, though, it seems like the Yankees are not. They're going to be outbid by several other teams. It's going to be about whether or not Juan Soto wants to be back in New York. That's going to be the long and short of it. If there's a competitive offer out there from the Blue Jays that say $710 million over 15, 16 years, and the Yankees are sitting there at $640, I think he easily leaves town for the alternative. Now, in tonight's show, we're going to get into quite a few other possibilities this offseason. We're not going to just be dominated by the Juan Soto talk, even though that seems to be where the market is heading right now. So many pieces are held up by it. But what are those pieces? What trades could follow? What free agents could follow after that? Speaking of the Yankees, if they don't get Juan Soto, one of their pivots could be Willy Adames. Now, of course, they've been connected to Nolan Arenado as well, and Paul Goldschmidt for an infielder, but they're not necessarily tied to going after a first baseman. They've shown the willingness to move pieces around the diamond to be able to make things work. Willy Adames would be another piece that they would have to move around to make things work. He would be a very good addition to that lineup. Do I think he ultimately fills the hole of Juan Soto and they move on and they're right back in World Series contention? I do not. I think Willy Adames is a very good player. I think any free agent outside of Juan Soto, he would be comparable to pretty much anybody on the market. An Alex Bregman, a Corbin Burns, a Max Fried, somebody of that type of an impact, whereas Juan Soto, I think, has that much more of an impact wherever he ultimately goes. Plate discipline is really there for Juan Soto. You got to wonder about the second half of the contract wherever he goes, but you're really going to be paying for the youth that he has right now. He's 26-ish, I believe, when he hit the free agent market, one of the youngest superstars we've ever seen hit free agency. You can understand why he turned down $450 million from the Nationals when the bidding from 4 teams is over $600 million. So good on Juan Soto for turning that money down and not just saying, hey, I'll pass up on the opportunity to make that kind of money. And then, of course, for Shohei Ohtani, resetting the payroll for pretty much all of these other teams out there, saying, hey, I got 10 at 70. I understand I'm a two-way player, but that's all money raises, or good things raise all boats, is what I'm trying to say here. And Juan Soto is benefiting because of the contract Ohtani got. Boris would like to top the money that Ohtani got as far as overall value. Understandably, the AAV is not going to be matched. I don't think anybody would think that Juan Soto is a $70 million player a year. But I think everybody would be able to assume that he's a, $40-45 million player if Ohtani's a 70. But we'll see how things work out. We'll see where he ultimately goes, but there's more to talk about than just Juan Soto. We talked a little bit about Willy Adames with the New York Yankees, but his market is not limited to the New York Yankees. I don't think anybody believes he's going to go back to Milwaukee, so where does that leave him going? The Dodgers talked about trading for him last offseason and at the trade deadline. Houston, if they lose Alex Bregman, is looking to do something. Toronto has money to burn right now, so if they don't get Juan Soto, they're going to be right in there. I believe the Mets are looking for an offensive upgrade. They would look into him as well. Now, that's just the teams that are in the Juan Soto market / the Houston Astros who are contingent upon the Alex Bregman market. There's more teams out there for a Willy Adames type player than there are for a Juan Soto. So his market might take a little bit of time, might take all the way up till Christmas. I don't think he'll sign at the winter meetings. Now, one free agent that's out there that is having his market move along rather quickly and could sign before the winter meetings as well is Nathan Eovaldi. Now, the starting pitcher market already got off to a rip-roaring start with Blake Snell going to the Dodgers, 5 years, $185 million. Great deal for him, deferred money, all that kind of thing. We've talked about that at length before. Check out our previous videos if you'd like to see our discussion on the Blake Snell deal. Now, where does this leave the starting pitching market? Well, you got Burns at the top, Fried probably second, and then there's a few more starting pitchers in that next group. We're talking about the Sean Manayas of the world, the Nathan Eovaldis of the world, those types of starting pitchers. For my money, the most playoff proven of those guys, the guy I would want in Game 7 of a World Series, is Nathan Eovaldi. That's the guy I would like to go after. So there's also some other guys out there like a Scherzer or a Buehler that are also out there on the starting pitcher market on the free agent side. And then you get to the trade market. You have Garrett Crochet. You've got other starting pitchers of that ilk that are looking for other moves as well. But Nathan Eovaldi, the news around him is that he could be signing early before we get to the winter meetings. Atlanta is pushing hard for him. They would like to lock up another starting pitcher for that rotation. Eovaldi's only going to command probably a 2, maybe a 3-year deal at most. I think if it goes to 3 years, I think Atlanta probably balks at that price. I think the Rangers would still be willing to go the 3 years for Eovaldi. Remember, they spent so much money the last 2 or 3 off seasons now to really build up to a World Series contender. It worked. They won a World Series. But one would have to argue that the DeGrom signing really hasn't worked out. They're a little bit thinner in the starting pitching that they would like. They got some good young starters coming. Kumar Rocker, Jack Leiter, to name a few. But they would like some more proven performance in that starting rotation. They got John Gray, who's really in there. Dane Dunning to a certain extent. We'll dig in more into the Rangers starting pitching options here in a little bit, but Nathan Eovaldi would surely give them a lot more stability in that rotation than what they're currently looking at with guys coming off of injury, poor performance, those kinds of things. So they still got roughly $40 million to spend, according to Evan Grant of the, I want to say the Dallas Morning News, but anyway, he said early on in the offseason that Texas was looking to spend roughly $45 million. They wanted to stay below the CBT. I understand that, around that time, they would still say they did the 220 million. They'd still be roughly about 20 million below the CBT. That would leave them some flexibility to make some trades at the deadline, which is what they did the year they won the World Series. That flexibility allowed them to make the moves necessary to push them over the top. Last year, they were all the way over. They couldn't do anything. That's what we kind of saw. They tried to make some moves to try to improve their offense a little bit, at least at the catcher spot with Carson Kelly, added a bullpen piece. Ultimately, it didn't work out. Obviously, poor performance, injuries, all played a major factor there in Texas. But they've got some money to spend. They were thought to be one of the dark horse teams in on a Juan Soto type at the beginning of the offseason. That never really materialized. I didn't think it would. We're talking about a $45 million average annual value commitment over a 15-year term when you're already talking about big-time salaries on your roster, including DeGrom, Semien, Seager, and others. They have some bigger fish to fry, and they have more holes in their roster than just one piece. Now, they will add a hitter to their lineup. I have no doubt about that. They will add at least one starting pitcher, whether it be bringing back a Heaney or an Eovaldi or another pitcher they've been connected with so far this offseason, Sean Manaea. They will address their starting staff. Chris Young has always been adamant about adding some starting pitching. They did a nice job bringing in Higashioka to help them with the catching. We'll dig on the why that signing is so important for them when we get to the Sasaki argument. But it's going to be an active offseason for the Texas Rangers once again, unlike last year where it was more just making things work around the periphery because they were so limited financially. They're going to have $45 million-ish to spend, and I'd imagine if there's an opportunity that comes their way, say Corbin Burns, says, hey, I really want to go to Texas, I really would like to go there, $30 million, I'm sure they would be able to free up for Corbin Burns, and then they'd be able to look at Ray Davis and say, hey, we got another ace on our staff now. Would you mind bumping that up to, say, $50 million this offseason? That way we can add another piece to their puzzle. So there is still some flexibility there in Texas. Now, that kind of concludes our Eovaldi part there, because the two teams that are really in on him most are the Texas Rangers and the Atlanta Braves. I've heard people connecting the Baltimore Orioles to him. I've heard people talking about the Boston Red Sox looking for a reunion, the New York Yankees possibility as well. I don't buy any more of those reports out there than just, hey, these teams are looking for starting pitchers. I understand the team for me, if I was looking for a starting pitcher, I would have thought the Orioles would have made a harder push for Eovaldi, and they still may. But for me, they should have really tried to re-sign their own guy in Corbin Burns. That's where the beginning and end of free agency would have been for me if I'm a Baltimore Orioles fan. I need some aces at the front of my rotation. I don't just need Burns. I need another starting pitcher in addition to Burns. So that's where I would have thought a great stack for them would have been Burns as the 1, Eovaldi as the 2, and then you got two great studs going into a postseason series where they've really struggled to perform once they get to October. They're a great 162 game season team, but once they get to October, they've fallen on their face twice now. So we'll see if they get some starting pitching there to help them out. But that's, where, as far as Eovaldi goes, that's kind of where his free agency's at right now. The news around Roque Sasaki is that the San Diego Padres have emerged as a real threat to be able to sign him. Now, what does that mean, quote unquote, real threat? I think that just means they're a contender. We've seen that a few teams have started to come out of the woodwork now over the last few days for Roque Sasaki. The thought being that the Dodgers are just too big of a behemoth. He doesn't want to be in that market where it's so overcrowded with other Japanese players that maybe he wants to go to a market where he can put his own footprint down, become an established starter on his own, and not be in the shadow of a Yamamoto or an Ohtani. Those are all valid arguments, but he's also been on a team with those guys before and has a good relationship with those players. Obviously, he could win a World Series if he goes with the Dodgers. I think they'd be the prohibitive favorite, even more so than they are already. But if they were able to land a Sasaki, and it would extend their runway even further. He's 22, 23 years old anyway. That means when he hits free agency next, he's going to be, 28, 29? And then you're going to have him for another 5 years. I don't believe the Dodgers are not going to re-sign him to an extension if they were able to bring him in now. Dodgers they could add their future ace of their staff right now by bringing him in as their number 5 starter. Yes, they're number 5. We're talking about Glasnow, Ohtani, Yamamoto, Snell, and then you get Sasaki. That's a way to take some pressure off, at least early on in your career. But of course, you're expected to win the series if you go to the Dodgers. Maybe he wants to go elsewhere. There are other teams in Major League Baseball other than the LA Dodgers, believe it or not. They're not going to sign every single free agent. They still are talking about the possibility of bringing back a Kershaw, a Walker Buehler, looking into the possibility of adding another starting pitcher, whether it be Garrett Crochet or a Max Scherzer type. They're looking to add another starting pitcher, but the Padres were always thought to at least have a candle in this one. I would believe their footprint now is a little bit more significant than that. Earlier this offseason, I told you the Dodgers were probably an 80% favorite to sign Sasaki. The way reports are coming out now, I would downgrade that to about a 60% chance of them bringing him in. I still think the Dodgers are the favorite. I still think they're the prohibitive favorite as well. But I do think the Padres have really stepped their efforts up to be able to bring him in. I think he would fit very well in that San Diego market. And he would be going up against those two guys that he's very friendly with. It would be a good rivalry there. He'd get a lot of his attention back home by going up against his countrymates. And we'll see how things work out with Sasaki there if he goes to San Diego. Another team, this is kind of the secret thing that I've been kind of catching up on anyway over the last few days, is that Higashioka speaks Japanese. He learned that when he was working with the New York Yankees, when he was catching Tanaka. And the reason why that's important, he's no longer the catcher for the San Diego Padres. He's now the catcher for the Texas Rangers. Rangers have been scouting Sasaki for the better part of, 8 years now? They have a connection with him already. Just like the Padres, I believe they are equally right there for to bring in Sasaki from Japan. Now, what would that look like in the rotation? Of course, you have the ace led by the ace of the staff in DeGrom, if healthy. You bring back Eovaldi because now you have more money to free up because Sasaki's not going to cost you too much, and now you've freed up even more money to go after a hitter or a bullpen arm. Maybe you go after a Tanner Scott now because the added flexibility of bringing in Sasaki at such a low cost. The signing of Higashioka might be more important than just a little pop behind the plate, a good competition partner there for Jonah Heim. I think that they were playing chess when everybody else was playing checkers with that signing. Now, it may amount to nothing, absolutely. But there are other starting pitchers coming over from Japan besides Sasaki. So I do believe the Rangers are going to get one of those guys. It remains a question as to who. But the investment in their catcher with Higashioka has really opened up the door more than it would have been beforehand, where they would have had to work exclusively with an interpreter to allow them to be able to get their message across to maybe a pitcher who doesn't speak as much English. So having Higashioka there, who's handled a successful starting pitcher who needed to have that connection with his catcher out there, really does help their candidacy to be able to bring in a Sasaki-type pitcher from Japan. Now, does this make the Rangers the favorites for Sasaki? No. But I am saying it does help them that they don't have to rely on an interpreter every single communication that they have with that player. Having a player that can speak the language be able to relay what the coach is trying to tell you, the manager, the hitting coach, pitching coach, everything is really going to be a lot more seamless by having one of your teammates, one of your battery mate here in this case, to be able to relay those same messages and be able to speak the same language as you and understand what you're actually trying to say. What the small differences in a language, he's going to be able to understand that because he worked with Tanaka. So again, just a small little bit of nugget there that the Rangers did bring in Higashioka, and they may have been playing a little bit more chess than what we originally thought. Than what the rest of the market possibly saw out there. But I want to get into a few of the teams out there as far as the moves that could possibly be made here with respect to their future outlook. So what that means is, for instance, the Toronto Blue Jays, they have so much of their money tied up in just a few players right now that they have all this money extra that they can go after a Shohei Ohtani last year or a Juan Soto. I want to look at the Toronto Blue Jays payroll just so you guys can see where all that money's at and why they have this money available. Now, the Blue Jays, we know they're on their situation. They're trying to push to be able to be competitive in the playoffs and possibly win a series or two. Do I think that they can get a World Series contender out of this offseason? I don't. I think they're too many moves away. One other bit of news from the Blue Jays is that they're interested in re-signing Jordan Romano. They just wanted a lower number there. I'd be curious to see if it's an incentive-laden deal after the injuries he struggled with the last year or so. Could be a reunion there in the offing. But let's go ahead and dig into some of these. Now, I mentioned that the Rangers have roughly $40-ish million to spend this offseason. We'll start there since I know quite a bit about the Rangers. They are my favorite team after all. Like I said, I don't try to hide that from you guys. But the Rangers, where is their money exactly divvied up? Well, you look at their starting pitching. Jacob deGrom, $40 million. Ouch. But you see how it's descending there? That does help a little bit. And then, of course, you got Tyler Mahle. He only threw 3 starts last year, $16.5 million. They really shut him down towards the end of the year, I believe, to make him a little bit healthier going into this year. If he's able to regain his composure on the mound, we're talking about a number 2 in your rotation. That's an easy 1-2. John Gray is your 3 right now. Dane Dunning, borderline number 4. I think he's probably your long man in the bullpen. More likely you'll have Kumar Rocker, Bradford up there, Jack Leiter as well. That's kind of where your rotation's at if you're the Texas Rangers. That's where their money is invested on that rotation. On the hitting side of things, well, we'll look at the relief pitchers real quick. They don't really have much, is my point. One starting pitcher before aside from the rest of them in pre-arb, and we'll see where their candidacy end up going. Higashioka, we see where his number falls in as a catcher. Jonah Heim as well. Then you get into their infield where another $60 million, roughly $58 million is tied up in Seager and Simeon. Lowe is going to be around $10, $11 million in arbitration. And then the rest of them are pre-arbitration. To the outfield, you got Adolis Garcia, $9 million. Leody Taveras, who absolutely fell on his face once again as a hitter. Love the guy as a player as far as his defensive abilities. His hitting, when it's on, looks really good. He really does play a great center field, but for $5 million, I was worried that they would be thinking about him as a non-tender candidate, especially at a $5 million number. But we've seen how center fielders are so valued in the marketplace. Even a hitter or even a center fielder who can't hit but can play defense the way Leody Taveras does has a market in today's baseball. So if they're able to offload that $5 million, I think they would love to do so. Teams that don't necessarily need a hitter in their center field spot but are looking for a better defensive outfield might turn to Leody Taveras. I think that's the reason why they held on to him. Otherwise, I'd be looking to move him to my 4th outfield spot. Can't count on Evan Carter right now because of injury. And then Wyatt Langford, I think, is going to have a monster second year. Why do I bring up all of these moves? Why do I bring up all of this payroll? To show you where the opportunity lies. Right now, they don't have too much committed for future dollars. You can see here to their outfield. They have a couple of guys in pre-arbitration and are going to stay that way for the foreseeable future. In their infield, they got a lot of money tied up in their middle infield, and it will be that way for years to come. You can see Simeon's deal actually gets a little smaller towards the end of it. Same thing with Seager, but not by a lot. Nathaniel Lowe is almost to his UFA status. He's got a year plus left on his deal right now. And then a whole bunch of pre-arbitration guys. You look at their catching situation, Jonah Heim, if he has another year like he did this year, I think he's a non-tender candidate absolutely for next year. If not a trade candidate around the trade deadline, see if somebody can get his bat back on track. But Jonah Heim has to pick up his offensive production after how bad it was last year. I don't think Sam Huff starts the season with the Rangers. I think he ends up on another team's roster before spring training. They really don't believe in his bat. They don't ever give him any time, and he needs to clear off the 40-man roster so they can bring in another guy that they actually do believe in, or at least want to have in that role. I don't believe they want to have Sam Huff in that role any longer. But where is the opportunity here? Well, like I said, Evan Grant had about $40 million that they could spend. Now, say they spend 20-ish million. Say they go a little bit higher than market for Nathan Eovaldi. I think the market for Eovaldi, for a pitcher of his caliber, based on the contracts we've seen this year and contracts for players of his like in years prior, you're probably looking 2 years, $40-45 million. Let's say they go 2 years, 50 just to get it done, or 3 for 70. Pencil in roughly a 25 AAV. That leaves you $15 million minus the 5 you just spent on Higashioka. That leaves you 10. Is that enough to really get you over the finish line to add a bat to the middle of that lineup? I don't think so. Is it enough to get you 3 relief pitchers? None of them that are going to work out as well as Yates and Robertson did last year for them. So it's going to be a little bit tight here. So with the moves that they've made, say they bring in a Sasaki to help out their rotation, maybe they let Eovaldi go. Then you got Sasaki in there as your number 3 in your rotation. Maybe your number 2, depending on how you break camp. And then you have more money to go out there and solve your bullpen issues. Maybe you trade off of this roster. Like I mentioned, Leody Taveras, maybe you trade him to a team that needs a defensive center fielder out there. The Yankees have struggled for years to have a good defensive outfield. They were better this past year. But, there's other teams out there that could use a player like that, whereas the Rangers don't necessarily need to keep him at that $5 million number. One other interesting trade note that I saw posted earlier this offseason, I'm going to say with an asterisk, a trade note, is that the Rangers could look to offload Adolis Garcia. He was the heartbeat of that team as they went to the World Series. I think that would be a very difficult move, but let's look at where he's at. He's 32 years old, 1 more year of arbitration after this, and then he hits UFA. He was an older guy when they brought him in from the St. Louis Cardinals years ago. Understandably, they weren't expecting this meteoric rise that he had. They did good for him and gave him a contract. But for $9 million, they were expecting a significantly better player than what they got in the second half of the year. Now, Rangers fans will tell you it all traces back to the collision that he had with Marcus Semien. When he had that collision, he was hitting a little bit better, and then his numbers went off a cliff. And they did. Maybe it is injury-related. Maybe he could be back. But he's always been a high strikeout guy. He's always been a little bit of a streaky hitter. And those are things, when you're 32, 33, those are the types of things that say, hey, this is the type of hitter I am now. Maybe you guys should just realize that's who I am and stop asking me to do more. As a Rangers fan, I understand the thought that maybe you can get the 2023 version of Adolis back. I get all that, but I'm not going to count on that when I'm building my roster. So if I have the opportunity to offload an Adolis Garcia to a team that needs offense, say to a team like the Pittsburgh Pirates, $9 million with 1 year left for Pittsburgh would be a great deal for them. Maybe you get back a couple of pitching prospects that you then can turn around and trade them for another piece to your lineup or another piece to your bullpen. Say the Milwaukee Brewers need to add some starting pitching depth. They need to add, and they have Devin Williams sitting there. Devin Williams immediately comes in as your closer, fairly equal money, and now you still have the extra money because you gave off Adolis Garcia. Now you have a hole in your outfield, of course, because you're giving up Garcia to be able to bring him in. But that would be the type of move that would be something the Rangers are looking into. Some unique ways to go about this offseason to where they're not just pigeonholed with just using that $40 million and once they're done, that's it. That's all they got left. So they could go a cheaper route this offseason and bring in an Andrew Heaney rather than a Nathan Eovaldi. If Eovaldi gets 2 years, $55 million from Atlanta, maybe the Rangers pivot to Heaney and get 2 years, $25. That's 12.5, roughly what it was at last year. For a very good number 3, 4 type starter, you bring in Sasaki, that leaves you $20 million to add a couple of bullpen pieces and a hitter to your lineup. You can make things work with that. So that's kind of how the Rangers offseason shapes up right now from a money perspective. Let's look at the Toronto Blue Jays. I know we got a few Toronto fans out there. Mark, I know you're one of them. So let's go ahead and look at your Blue Jays. Where is your money invested? Well, Gausman and Bassett, $23 million. Then you have Barrios as well. Barrios has an opt-out after 26. And then you got Eovaldi Rodriguez as well. A good contract there. Manoah has been up and down with his performance. But this is, like I said, the offseason of the Blue Jays right now is all about pushing for a contending team this year once they get to the postseason. Gausman as your number 1. Okay, you still need some more help in that rotation. Bassett as your number 2. You still need more help in that rotation. Barrios and Rodriguez as your 3, 4, and then Manoah as your 5. I would not expect this to be the rotation they go into the season with. I think they're going to look to add one more starting pitcher if they don't bring in Soto. I would expect them to be in there for Burns. I would expect them to be in there for Fried as well. But they do need to add a starting pitcher, in my estimation. You look at their bullpen. Chad Green, $10 million. Ouch. Swanson at 3. That's a good number. And then a bunch of pre-arb guys. They still need to add a closer to this bullpen, though. Catcher, they got a couple of guys still in arbitration. Kirk. But they need to add another backup catcher as far as I'm concerned. Danny Jansen was perfect for them. Welcome in, Sub-Zero. Yes, we'll get into Fried and Burns predictions here in just a moment. You can see Vlad Guerrero Jr. is about to hit free agency along with Bo Bichette. Then a bunch of pre-arb guys. And then in their outfield, George Springer is about to hit to become a free agent again along with Varsho, who's about to hit his free agency for the first time. Look at how much money is committed after 26, though. Arbitration, 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 arbitration. They have 0 long-term contracts outside of possibly Barrios. And I guess you could consider Eovaldi Rodriguez one of those guys committed after 2026. So they could easily go after a Juan Soto and clearly be able to build out their roster from there. Even if they brought back a Bo Bichette or a Vlad Guerrero Jr., they could still keep this team together if they were successful this year. That's why they have so much money to go out there and spend this offseason. That's why they have so much money to spend in future years. That's why they are the favorite to give the most money to Juan Soto out there on the market right now. So we'll see what they decide to do, but they are poised to do some big things this offseason as they try to save their jobs in that front office. To your question there, Sub-Zero, Max Fried and Corbin Burns predictions. Fried, I told you guys at the beginning of the offseason that the Red Sox, for me, are the team for him. I thought other teams that need some starting pitching, like the Giants, could possibly dip in there if they miss on their top targets as well. I heard the Giants were a team that's looking at Corbin Burns quite a bit, and they're not encumbered by the Juan Soto discussions, which is absolutely mystifying to me. If I'm the Giants, I'm moving heaven and earth to get into conversations for Juan Soto. Why they're not in there is beyond me. Zaidi's interviewing to go back to the Dodgers right now, their former GM. He was terrible as far as trying to acquire top-level free agents. Buster Posey's regime seems to already be giving up on those players and trying to focus on pitching first. Hopefully that's their thought. Maybe next year they're hoping to get in there for one of the top sluggers, but they're once again missing on the aircraft carrier in their lineup. They don't have one of those players right now. Maybe they go after a Pete Alonso type to kind of tide over the fan base, but that just, for me, there's so much better I would expect out of that Giants organization. A very storied franchise. And why do teams in the Bay Area over the past 5, 6, 7 years seem to be getting in their own way? The Athletics did it for decades and decades and decades. Now the Giants are doing the same thing as far as not capitalizing on the opportunities that they have in front of them, or not even going after the opportunities that they should be going for. And it's just mystifying to me as a baseball fan that they're doing things a little backwards from the way that other teams have been built in the past there, specifically in San Francisco. But for me, Max Fried, my prediction is to the Boston Red Sox. I would expect a little bit lower value overall. I know a lot of people are speculating about $80 million more for Burns than Fried. But the consistency is there, around 160, 180 innings for Fried. And I think he's easily a number 2 in a rotation and can be a number 1. Now, Burns, where do I think he's going to go? I think he's going to go to one of the teams that misses on Soto. Whether that, say the Soto goes to the Blue Jays. We'll just throw them out there and say they get Soto. So I think the Mets would easily become the favorite for Burns. I think the Yankees would step out of that running a little bit. I think the Dodgers are in there for Sasaki. I don't think they're in there at the level for Burns. But what a move it would be to add a couple more Cy Young winners this offseason in Snell and then Burns, and then still add a Santander or a Hernandez for your corner outfield spot. They're going to be active, and then they're still looking for a closer as well. So it's going to be a busy offseason for the Dodgers, even more so than it already has been. But that's kind of my predictions. Fried to the Red Sox, and we'll say Burns to the Mets. Now, say the Mets win the Juan Soto sweepstakes. Where would Burns go? I would say probably Toronto. Say the Yankees get Soto, who ultimately gets Burns. I would say probably the Blue Jays. That's strictly because of the money. I think they'd have the money burning a hole in their pocket, as they say, to try to do something big and splashy this offseason. They would try to do something big with that lineup as well, possibly bringing in a Santander or trading for another bat or adding a Pete Alonso type, move Guerrero over to third and put Alonso at first base. Guerrero can still play third base, did some of that last year. That'd be an interesting move for them, but they're looking for some big moves to try to swing things back into playoff contention. And I think they're too far away to be able to compete for a World Series. But winning a series in the postseason is not out of the realm of possibility if things break their way. If it doesn't, it could get ugly there around the trade deadline. So let's kind of dig in on another team here, looking at their financial numbers anyway. Let's look at a team that's not in the Soto sweepstakes. Let's look at the Houston Astros, because their offseason is confusing to me. I don't understand their thought process when it comes to the players that they've chosen to keep, the players that they've chosen to lose, and I think it's spelled the end of this run with the Houston Astros. Now, Bregman's a free agent this year, but look at the free agents that they have coming. Framber Valdez is going to be a free agent after this year. There's some conversations about him being moved. You have Lance McCullers under contract for this year and next. Understandably, he was a productive starting pitcher at one time. He hasn't been for a couple of years now. Javier's locked up. That looks good. Garcia's still in arbitration, and then you got the rest of the young guys. You look at your relievers. This is where the money kind of was confusing to me. You already had Ryan Presley at $14 million. He was your closer. He was probably a better closer at that time than Josh Hader. You bring in Josh Hader for $100 million. What are we doing here? You look at that $19 million, that could easily have been given to an Alex Bregman. That could easily have been given to any one of these other players that have left over the years, rather than going to a Josh Hader. Kind of giving you a redundancy in that bullpen. I understand having one great bullpen arm is not as good as having two great bullpen arms. I get all of that. But they had a very productive bullpen already with Ryan Presley in there, Abreu among others, and they were making it work with the budget they had already used on that bullpen. Then to add another $20 million in payroll to a bullpen that was already producing was mystifying. Now, I understand bullpens are mercurial. 1 year they're up, 1 year you're down. Hader, for the better part of his career, has always been a very good run preventer. But there are other avenues I would have invested that money. Adding a first baseman, going after pretty much anybody other than a relief pitcher. That's what was confusing. And now they're looking into the possibility of trading Presley as well, because they're trying to add some more money flexibility to try to bring back Bregman or sign in Adames or go after a Christian Walker. They have holes to fill. And then, of course, they still got to be able to find money for some of their other free agents. Like if they want to keep Valdez, they're going to have to pony up here, and we'll see if they do so. Looking at their catcher, Diaz, pre-arb guy, great numbers there as far as where they are at financially. Their infield is pretty much locked up with Altuve at second base, Pena at short, but they still have issues at first and third. Do they bring back Bregman? Do they bring in Adames? Do they go after Diaz and trade with the Rays? Do they go after a Christian Walker on the market, or do they go after the big fish in Pete Alonso? I think they're out of the market for a guy like Pete Alonso. I don't think they could afford him. Now, say they lose Bregman. I think they would love to be able to bring in Willy Adames to solve that hole at third base. If they are unable to do so, it starts to get really thin. Then you're looking into the possibility of trading for a Nolan Arenado to take over at third base for you. I think that would be the next step for them if they miss on Bregman and Adames. Christian Walker, I think, would be their preferred target at first base, then Yandy Diaz. But their infield outside of those middle infielders is completely up in the air right now. Then you get over to their outfield structure, and this is where it gets even more confusing. You have Tucker. He's an arbitration guy. Last year of arbitration, you're going to have to spend significant money on him. DH, they got Yordan Alvarez. They got him locked up till 2028, 29. He'll be a free agent. That's the one guy they've really locked up. Tucker is a guy I would absolutely look to do that for as well. It's going to cost a pretty penny. You're probably talking 20, 28, 29. And if he has a career year this year, we're probably talking about a $30+ million player. Tucker is that good of a hitter, that good plate discipline as well. Dubon has a $6 million contract this year, but there's really no other significant, game-changing players that they have in their outfield, and they don't really have it coming either. So they're in a bit of a pickle with their offense in that outfield if they lose Tucker. It could be basically Altuve, Pena, Alvarez, and a bunch of nobodies that we haven't heard of in years. Diaz is going to be there for a while, of course, but this is a team that we thought was, the class of the American League for the past 7-8 years as far as how you build and grow from within. They don't really have that next wave coming, so we'll see what they do. Maybe they trade a Presley and try to get some prospects back and hold on to their prospects if they can this offseason, or their prospects, instead of trading them for a Yandy Diaz-type player. But that Hader contract was really mystifying to me, and I wonder if it keeps them from signing some of their top-flight free agents like a Valdez or a Bregman or a Tucker next year. John, Skip Schumacher as senior advisor, where does he come from and what does he bring to the front office of the Rangers? Good question. Former player, had a great year with the Miami Marlins as their manager the last few years. Was the manager of the year, I believe, at one point there as well. But things did not go well last year, to say the least. He did not like the direction of the franchise, and basically they were looking to cut corners. And so he was the odd man out. Now, he could be the next coach in waiting for the Texas Rangers, but he's going to be a senior advisor to the GM. Really like his addition to the ball club. Now, what does he bring to the club? A different approach than a Bruce Bochy type. Bochy's been around, seen this, all of that kind of thing. Very old head as far as Major League Baseball is concerned. Maybe not necessarily as analytically driven as, say, younger coaches in Major League Baseball. We've seen how the Rangers have gone about analytic coaches before with Chris Woodward, etc. I think Schumacher is kind of a blend of a Bochy type coach and, say, the coaches that or managers that you see nowadays, where they're just point and click, whatever the front office tells them to do, they do. I think he's a good blend of that, and I think seeing how Bochy does it this year, if Bochy decides to hang it up after the season, he could easily step in there. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility Bochy goes back into retirement after this coming season. He's got another World Series ring. He's getting up there. He's up there along with Dusty Baker as far as age. I don't think anybody's clamoring for Dusty to be coming back at this point. Most people thought Dusty was done before he signed with the Houston Astros to clean up their mess that they had after their scandal. But he did. He got it all back under wraps, won a World Series. Bochy got in there, won a World Series. We'll see what happens with the Rangers this year, but I think it's not out of the realm of possibility that Bochy says, all right, I got another World Series. I got this organization back on track for where things are as far as managing, as far as where things are on the field. They'll be back to being no longer the seller of the division like they were the last 3 years before Bochy got there, and they're in a better spot than where they were at any point in their history when they had Bochy. So good on them for being able to get him in there, but Schumacher, to answer your question, he could be the next manager in waiting for the Rangers. We've gone over 3 teams now as far as where their money is at this offseason, where they could possibly see some improvements, and why certain teams have been a little bit confusing with the moves that they made in years past, and now it's left them with the holes that they have on their roster. I want to flip over to where the free agents, kind of the free agent leaderboard, if you will, anyway. The top 50 is what MLB Trade Rumors has here. They had 13 years at $600 million for Juan Soto for their prediction. They have 4 teams over $600 million. That would be a little under. But let's kind of see where where his market ends up. Like I said, the news of the day is that his market could ultimately crystallize as soon as tomorrow. We may even get a signing before the winter meetings. I would still expecting it for the winter meetings. I'm hoping it's for that Tuesday. I will be live during the winter meeting, so make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. That way we can keep you guys updated as what's happening at the winter meetings. If he signs, say, the Sunday of the winter meetings, right before the Hall of Fame announcement, that'll give the industry some time to kind of process how his signing affects the rest of the market, and then the rest of the week could be bananas. So I'm really hoping this thing goes off early, because once he signs, it's going to be about a 12-hour, nothing happening, the shock of the deal, then the press conference with Boris there, the physical, all those kinds of things. I think they would like to get all of that done and have him on the podium at the winter meetings. Boris is looking to exact his pound of flesh from the MLB community. And one side note, I, along with all of you, kind of grew up with the MLB Network and kind of enjoying their talent talk about all the signings, the business of baseball, behind the scenes, what's actually going on. I love the 162 game season, the postseason, all that. Don't get me wrong. But the most fun time of year for me as a fan, aside from watching the game, is what's happening with the roster. What moves are they going to make? And I went back to watching the network recently. I haven't had it, had to shift things around with streaming services, but I went ahead and got the MLB Network, just standalone coverage, just so I could check it out. And I'm sure my lady told me at one point that they had stopped having High Heat, and they stopped having all those other great shows with Mad Dog Russo out there and MLB Now. But the only show that they really have right now is Hot Stove, and we're probably going to lose that after this offseason as well. They're going to go basically to an MLB Tonight and then a whole bunch of documentaries, reruns of games, that type of channel. I would just like to take a moment and say that's very, very sad to see where baseball in the national media landscape has really kind of fallen off. You saw Ken Rosenthal essentially be jettisoned because of payroll constraints a few years ago. He started up the YouTube channel with a couple other guys with Foul Territory. That's been picked up now from the YouTube channel to be on Bally Sports. Now FanDuel, good on that. Podcasts are coming up. John Heyman has his with Joel Sherman. You can check that out with your Apple Podcasts, all that kind of thing. But it's just, I miss having the debates that we would see out there, with Brian Kenny leading the historical, talking about how things were for the Hall of Fame debate. All this month we've been talking about Hall of Fame, who's close, who's going to be in there. We have candidacy of the day. What does their Hall of Fame candidacy look like? We don't get any of that now. The fans are basically left with a list of names that are on the ballot. You wait till the day of the announcement and say, all right, that's it. There's no other discussion. Now the days of saying, hey, there's a privilege of being on the ballot, and sure it is. But there's no longer the honoring of the players that there was even last year. And that's something I'm sorely missing as a fan. So for those of you who are baseball fans that have really enjoyed that type of content from, say, the MLB Network in years past, that they no longer offer that to you. You're having to go elsewhere to get that from guys like me here on YouTube, have a community, talk in our chat, like Jordan joined us here, Tim, John, Sub-Zero, thank you for joining us, all the guys once again, thank you for joining us. But there's not really a discourse for that anymore. MLB Trade Rumors, the site that I'm looking at right now, has a chat every now and again, but there's no longer a place where you really have that kind of discord anymore. And I think it's going to disappear entirely next year. High Heat, I think, is going to be gone. You're going to be left with MLB Tonight, highlight shows, and that's about it. And I don't think that's going to help us grow the game as far as baseball fans. We want to have those types of conversations among our friends. We like the game of baseball. We want to talk the game of baseball with our friends. That's part of why I started this channel, is because I enjoy talking sports, period. Me and my dad would always talk sports. He's my one outlet that I have in my life that I can talk about it at any point in time. Absolutely love talking sports. I could mention to him something about hockey. He barely knows anything about it, but he'll be right there with me along talking about it. But the fact that baseball is starting to dip away from some of those conversations on the national scale, ESPN is going to the soundbite thing. At the beginning, when they started doing this 5-10 years ago, I kind of waved it off, said, we don't really need that. But because they're going to that short-term videos, they don't really have the in-depth conversations or any of the conversations that I've really enjoyed having with you guys, even here. Jordan, I know we've talked quite a few times. John, I know we've talked quite a few times about some deeper moves that could have happened with other moves last year or the year before. I've done this for, 3 years now since I started this channel? and I really enjoy coming here and being able to talk sports with you guys. So it was very disheartening to open up MLB Network. The one time I downloaded the channel, got the app up, got it ready to go. I watched High Heat, and I'm like, all right, MLB Now will be on sometime in the next couple of hours. I'll just leave it on in the background until it comes on. And all I got all day long was just documentaries. So thank you guys for joining us here at the Upside and just having some fun with us being able to talk baseball. Um, Hopefully this forum doesn't disappear as well. I don't think as long as you guys are here it will, and hopefully we can continue to grow this community and spread it to others who might not have that same outlet anymore that that we used to have. So thank you guys for joining us. Anyway, Jordan, can't wait for the dominoes from Juan Soto. I couldn't agree more. Like I said, once Juan Soto goes, I would expect the market to kind of just shake and reverberate with the detail. Oh my God, he got 675. He got $700 million for 18 years. Some crazy number like that. It's going to be unbelievable what he signs for. And oh, by the way, there's going to be a reckoning, by the way, for the Dodgers as far as how they've been able to spend their money with deferrals. I saw a clip on TikTok from one of the reporters. I want to say his name was Sando. I can't remember his name. But MLB owners are already griping about how the Dodgers are being able to spend money in future years. Over $1 billion in commitments from 2028 to 2046. Just an incredible amount of money in deferrals. Other ownership groups can't really compete with that type of money. And I think baseball is going to start cracking down on the deferral side of the contracts. Now, they might limit you to having at any time $100 million in deferrals, and that's about it. They might do something like that to make it still a possibility for you to do deferrals, or make it a more aggressive tax. Say if you're in the CBT, that you have to pay a higher tax rate if any of those dollars are deferred. So for contracts that are normally in the CBT, say you pay a dollar for dollar tax. Well, if it's a deferral and you pay that money down the line, instead of it being a dollar for dollar tax, it'd be a dollar for $1.50 tax the year on that cap number. So we'll see what happens with the deferral arguments. But the dominoes around Juan Soto, they're going to start falling probably in 24 hours after that one goes. So if he does sign before the winter meeting, say he just agrees to a deal with the Dodgers or the Phillies or whoever he decides to sign with on, say, Friday or Saturday of this week. He gets the physical done Sunday. He gets his press conference announced on Monday. They do the press conference at the winter meeting on Tuesday. That means we're probably going to have a very active winter meetings because all those teams will now have had some time to digest where he's going, that they're out of the running, that they can now spend the money on somebody else. So hopefully those dominoes will really start falling with that Juan Soto deal. But like I said, there's other moves out there that are independent of that, possibly being an Eovaldi type player who could sign independent of Juan Soto. Those are some free agents that we could look at outside of Soto if he decides to take more time. Tim, will the Mets sign Soto to a 15-year deal worth $675 billion? Billion, no. Million, possibly. So I know it's just a typo, but I get what you're trying to say. 15 years, I think, is very likely. I think we're probably talking maybe even 16 years just to lower that AAV even further. I understand that would take him to, age 42, age 43 seasons. I mean, we're already seeing pitchers right now get into their age 43 season with their contracts, looking at Scherzer, Verlander type pitchers, and Verlander's looking to pitch one more year, even though he looked absolutely cooked this past season with the Houston Astros. Look at Aaron Rodgers for the New York Jets. Does he look like a quarterback that's a multiple MVP winner, a Super Bowl winning quarterback with that New York Jets team? He's got so many weapons on that offense, a pretty good defense that's underperforming since they fired Saleh as their head coach. Does he look like he's still got it? That he's the MVP between here? That he's the MVP with his arm? Absolutely not. He looks cooked. And Verlander, I think, is absolutely at that point as well. Scherzer still showed some effectiveness last year. He does give up a few more long balls, but he does have to be, or he is more susceptible to the long ball than ever before. But I'd say he has at least one more year left in him. Whereas Verlander, I would say that last year should have been the last. And teams looking to sign him should look at that and say, hey, we're going to do your contract, but we don't want to do anything that's, $10 million guaranteed. We'll give you, a $5 million guarantee, and then we'll give you $15 million in incentives, and another $5 if you hit so many starts, and then that's how you get your money. But Verlander, I don't think should sign a deal like that based on the quality of pitcher he's been in his career. I think he's earned a big deal if he's going to sign somewhere, and I don't think a team should give him that deal. Now, there's always going to be that desperate team out there on the market that misses all their targets in free agency. They want to grab some headlines and say, hey, we at least got Justin Verlander. That's ultimately what I think is going to happen, but they really shouldn't. Verlander looks cooked. They need to move on. But will the Mets be the team that does the deal for Soto? They're one of the four. It's so difficult to predict where he's going to go right now because I don't think he's going to go back to the Yankees strictly because of, hey, I was with the Yankees, it was all good, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that's the reason why he's going to make his decision. I think he's going to base his decision on the best fit for him and the money. And if the Yankees are the best fit and the money is close, I think he could go back to the Yankees. Do I think either of those are true? No. I would say the Yankees are a little bit less than, but he had a good experience there last year. I could be proven wrong. That leaves you with the Red Sox, Blue Jays, and Mets that are left among the teams that already have offers out to him. And then, of course, the Dodgers, who are circle back to me once you get the numbers in. Where do I think the number ultimately ends up? 675 sounds about right. 700, I think, is where Boris wants to get it. 705. We'll see if it gets that high. If it does, I think the Blue Jays and Mets are going to be there. I think the Dodgers probably bow out at that point, even though they have so much money that they're sitting on after bringing in Shohei. Their math tables are all messed up because they did not expect this influx of cash that they are having since bringing in Ohtani. So they can still do more, and I expect them to do more. I'm just not sure they feel that Soto is a necessary addition to their club. They're already considered a World Series favorite on the National League side. I think any other moves that they do add to that team are only going to enhance their favorite in the NL side. Now, if the Mets are able to bring him in, Mets, I believe, are going to be right there with the Dodgers as far as among the best teams in the National League. Braves have a candle for that one as well, as do the Philadelphia Phillies. Phillies are looking to do some interesting things. We'll get into the Bohm argument here in just a moment. But for me, I think Mets are going to be right there, and Blue Jays. Red Sox aren't out. I can't really put my finger on it. Before the offseason, or before we really got in this far, I probably would have told you the Dodgers were the team, but they spent some money on Snell. They still have some more money to spend, but they have so many avenues, ways to get better this offseason that don't require them to go after Soto. So I think there's not the need, the urgency that, say, a team like the Blue Jays looks to field to field a winning team this coming season, nor like the Mets or like the Red Sox. I think all those have bigger impetuses to try to sign him, and I think he's probably going to go to one of those teams. My favorite before the season, or before the offseason really got going, was the Dodgers. I think they're probably a distant fifth right now. And I don't think it's a distant fifth, like 1% chance. I think there's still probably a 15% chance he ends up with LA. But I think the Yankees are a little bit better of a favorite, and then I think the other three teams are even more so. So if I had to predict where he goes, Red Sox, Mets, Blue Jays. Jordan, ever since Brady, lots of people are trying to go way longer than they should. Yeah, that and the money is so high right now. If you're a veteran and you can at least give him, say, 20 starts right now, that's what I'd expect out of, say, Max Scherzer. What is that worth to you as an organization? If you can give you 20 starts, say 15 of those are Cy Young, or at least the Max Scherzer that we saw during the World Series run with the Texas Rangers type of Max Scherzer, if you can get that for 15 starts out of Scherzer, what is that worth to you? Is that worth $15 million? Is that worth $20 million? I don't think it's worth $40 million, but I think there's a case to be made that it might be worth $1 million a start. I don't think anybody expects him to make 32 starts. Same for Verlander. How much do you think he's worth to you in your rotation? If you're trying to save headlines, say like the New York Giants, say like the San Francisco Giants trying to save face once again. We would really try to go out there and bring in top flight free agents, but we missed. But hey, we got this shiny new object, Justin Verlander. He wants to end his career with us. We really have a chance. That's the kind of move I would see a team going after Justin Verlander for. Do I think it's going to work? No. Do I think Verlander's cooked? Yes. Do I think he's getting overpaid? Yes. Would I rather sign Scherzer? Absolutely. But I think he's going to get a deal, and I think he's going to get a good deal somewhere. Since it's Adkins and or Shetkins, as we call him up here, and Shapiro's final year, I think they go all out. I absolutely agree with you, Jordan. If I were if I was the owner of the Blue Jays, I would look at that situation and say, hold up. We're not going to mortgage our future. We're not going to set our organization back 5 years and have to do a complete and total tear-down rebuild. because we're trying to save your job and get into the postseason one more time and win a series one time. That's where I would have the issue if I'm part of the ownership group there with Toronto. But maybe they're just that desperate to get back into the postseason. They're like, hey, come hell or high water, we'll go through the rough years, we'll save money by not spending, and if things work out, great, we're back in the winner's circle. But we'll go ahead and go through those down years and try to save money on the player contract side. That's not how I would operate if I was the owner. I would look at that organization and say, hey, if these guys are all lame ducks, I would immediately say, you're gone, and you're gone, and you're gone, and you're gone. If you're not willing to do that right now to guarantee the future of your franchise, and you're just going to let them go out there on one-year deals and try to make something happen, then you deserve whatever happens. Sorry, Toronto owners, if that's just how it looks to me from an outside observer looking at your situation. Could it work? Absolutely. Are they a terrible team? No. Did they play like a terrible team? Yes. Is their future, their championship window wide open? Absolutely not. You're talking about players that are about to hit free agency in Vlad Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette. Other players that are going to hit free agency within the year after that in Springer and Bassett and Gosman. Your long-term commitment is to Jose Barrios. This is not exactly a recipe for success currently built there in Toronto. And the prospects that you held on to, that you thought were going to turn into something, really haven't worked out. And more prospects that you have in the minor league system aren't any better. And so this could be the end of the line for Toronto fans as far as having any candle at possibly having a playoff spot next year. If they don't win, if they don't get a top flight free agent, which I think they will, I think the ownership group has already made their decision. They're going with this front office group. You're not going to change it at this point. You would have made the decision before the season ended to do something like that. But they made the decision that they want to try to win, and to save their jobs, come hell or high water, they're going to have to win to be able to get it done. So Soto, Burns, Santander, Fried, whoever they get, they have to do something big this offseason. So I absolutely agree with you there. If they don't win, they all are going to be out the door, and it's not going to really matter at that point anyway, because it'll be a total regime change, changing of the guard. Guerrero will probably be flipped at the deadline. Bichette will be flipped at the deadline if things don't work out. Gosman could be flipped after the year. Bassett as well. There's so many things that could happen this year for the Blue Jays. It could literally go any direction. It could end up in a 95-win season for them. It could end up in a 60-win season for them. But that's quite a window there for them. I think more realistically, we're probably talking about a sub-80-win team that's currently constructed. I think if you add a Juan Soto, you probably get above that 500 mark. If you add another free agent on top of that, we're probably talking high 80s. But right now, the way things stand, they have to seriously increase the talent on that roster to be able to win this coming season and keep that talent around after that. Much like the Houston Astros, where they have so many guys coming up in free agency, they could, of course, try to re-sign their guys. The Blue Jays could try to do the same thing. Maybe things work out. You bring in Soto, you get and win a series this postseason, and then you try to re-sign Guerrero, re-sign Bichette. Melton, Cubs and Rangers are talking Bellinger trade. Rangers did have some interest in Cody Bellinger when he was a free agent. They were not willing to pay at the market that he was. Rangers are looking for a bat. They're looking for an upgrade in their corner outfield spot, center field position as well, and first base. Bellinger fits all of that. Be a Swiss Army knife to fit in there. I wonder what the trade would ultimately look like. Rangers aren't going to eat all of that money. Say the Cubs eat $10 to $12 million of that contract this year, $10 to $12 million the next year. I think then the Rangers would be seriously considering giving up a decent piece or two in return. Maybe you say they eat $20 million total of the Bellinger contract, send Leody Taveras to make the rest of the money work, and then add a couple of prospects. That would be an interesting trade as well. Ethan, let me see where you're getting this. Let me check the headlines. Where are you getting that from, Ethan? I do not see anything. Rangers are looking to add some starting pitching. Could possibly be a good fit there. I don't necessarily like the idea of Severino himself coming to Texas. I'd rather have brought in a Sean Manaea of the New York Mets starting pitchers, or bring back a Eovaldi or a Heaney. Freed to the Yankees, I don't think that one happens. Any news on Teo Hernandez? Not as of yet. His market is clearly held up by Juan Soto. If Soto decides to go to the Dodgers, then it opens up on other spots as well. MLB Scoops. I am not familiar with that one. I follow most of the national reporters. Interesting. MLB Scoops, huh? Let's go ahead and just see what it is. No, I don't think that's it. No. I don't see where you're getting that one from, my friend. Oh, wait. Is this it? Huh. Interesting. They don't have any source information. They don't have the reporter even tied to it. They have the Mets getting Soto from a day ago. Unless these are really deep pulls, it's very interesting here. Now, the one part that makes me curious about this X page, I guess, I can't call it Twitter anymore, X, is that they're followed by two of the pages I actually follow, which is very interesting to me. Makes me wonder if they are legit or not. No. Looks like somebody's just jumping to conclusions all over the place. Okay, I'm not going to give that one too much credibility. Maybe they're right, but I don't see anything there to lend credence to their stuff. Yeah, it looks like Trust Me Bro source. I like that one. All right, so Teoscar Hernandez, I think in all likelihood, if Soto does not go back to the Dodgers, he will end up there. Bellinger, I think the Rangers would be in talks for the Cubs for Cody Bellinger. Mariners, I think, make a lot more sense. Yankees make more sense as well. Rangers still have more priorities on the pitching side that they want to address first, and then still add one bat to that lineup. I think they want to add a corner outfield, first base type bat, so Bellinger would make sense in that respect. But they also are looking at other trade possibilities, Devin Williams, Ryan Helsley, Jordan Montgomery. They have pieces on their roster that they could easily flip to be able to acquire some of those pieces out there. So looking at, I want to go back here to the Rangers chart here. Bear with me for just a second. I want to go back to their table of players here. So for instance, we talked a little bit earlier about Adolis Garcia. One other piece that they could move is Ezekiel Duran. His market value is really high as far as position players for the Texas Rangers. He has some length left. He's still pre-arb, and so for teams looking for offense at a cheap rate, he'd be a great get out there. The Rangers have a ready-made player to fill his role on this roster in Justin Foscue, Dustin Harris type players. Jonathan Ornelas broke in with a big club this year and really proved to be a good asset for Bruce Bochy. He deployed him all over the place, and I think that would be another good get for the Rangers to use some of the depth that they have to add a relief pitcher or a starter that they need. Say they want to bring in Jordan Montgomery. Say the Diamondbacks eat half of that deal. That means you $10 million for Montgomery and you send out Duran back the other way. Those would all be interesting additions for the Rangers. Ethan, who do you like for Shane Bieber? You could always just, go back to this, hey, Guardians, easy fit, blah, blah, blah. But I think he wants a fresh start somewhere. I think he wants to show that he's healthy. Maybe getting out of Cleveland, another front office, another club gets to look at him, another another training staff gets to work with him and try to keep him healthy. I think the Red Sox would be a great fit. I really do. I think he'd be an easy number one if he's healthy and gets back to the form he's used to, and would be a low-cost option for them to be able to sign. I think a better option, at least from a team from a guy that would like to see the Orioles succeed on the pitching side, I think he'd be a great fit there as their number two. I talked about Eovaldi being that type of a player, would be my ideal number two for the Orioles to sign. I haven't heard too much about them even talking to him. I'm sure they've talked to his camp. I'm sure they've exchanged numbers, all that kind of a thing. But I think Bieber would be a lower cost option for them and possibly give them the same level of a pitcher in a Shane Bieber. The question, of course, is injury. They've been willing to do short-term deals in the past, and it's not going to cost them really anything to get it done. I would do something like that if I'm the Baltimore Orioles. Now, who do I like? Again, Red Sox for me. Orioles make a lot of sense. Teams that are looking for a starting pitcher to come in there and make a difference in their rotation. Braves had some interest in him at before the season last year. I'd expect them to have some interest as well if they miss on their other top targets, Walker Buehler and Nathan Eovaldi. So Bieber, I think, is going to do well, probably in that 10 to 15 million range. Probably some incentives in there, or even incentives to get up to that number. All of those things are in the realm of possibility for Shane Bieber. Opinion on Chapman, I kind of covered this a little bit last night, but I actually really like the signing. I love Aroldis Chapman as a player. Still has 14.9 strikeouts per 9. Absolutely fantastic numbers there. ERA 3.79. He's never going to be able to hold on a runner again to save his life. You're going to be infuriated as a Red Sox fan to watch him give up a walk, and then the guy literally walks to second base and then walks to third base because he can't hold a runner. But then he'll strike out the next three guys, and then you'll be like, great job, Aroldis. Way to go. That's just part of the Aroldis roller coaster that you're going to have to get used to. He does give up the long ball every now and again, but he's still well over 100 miles an hour when he really gasses it up there to the plate. His changeup's around 90, so he's still very effective. He had a little bit of a rough start with the Pirates last year, so signing a little bit earlier in free agency this year, I think, should be good for him settling into Boston. I don't think he's going to be asked to be the closer, but when you have an injury back there, I think he'd be easily the next guy you'd tab as the closer should you have an injury or poor performance at that spot. And I think it's a good signing. 10.75, not a bad number. And they still have plenty of money to go after a starting pitcher or two, and maybe an offensive bat as well. But appreciate you guys joining us tonight. We'll be live again tomorrow night. We'll be around 9 o'clock. We got a few videos made for you guys as well. Those will be coming out over the next few days. And then remember, we'll be live for you guys covering the Major League Baseball winter meetings all week next week. So make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. Follow us over on X at UpsideSN, Facebook Upside Sports Network. A few of you guys have followed me over there as well. So I appreciate those of you who have done so. And thank you guys for joining us tonight. We'll be live again tomorrow night. We'll go over some more teams as far as where their finances are at. We may have some other free agency news. It sounds like things are starting to get a little bit active. Usually just to kind of give you a roadmap for how things work with the winter meetings. Teams like to get a deal or two done before they get up to the winter meetings. They like to get some of these deals with players that they're close on done so they can focus on what they want to get done at the winter meeting. So expect a few moves over the next 24, 48 hours. Saturday will probably be relatively quiet. Early in the day on Sunday will be relatively quiet as they're all traveling down here to Dallas. I'm about an hour and a half away from Dallas, so I will look into going to the hotel, possibly getting some interviews with some of your favorite MLB talent if I'm able to. But we'll see what all of that is going to entail. But for now, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. Hopefully we'll have some news tomorrow Possibly some signings, maybe even a Nathan Eovaldi. Maybe we'll get a shock of the world and Juan Soto will sign, but should be an interesting sign. But Ethan, Kyle Higashioka has a good relationship with Severino, so maybe it is true they played 5 years together. I think it's more likely that the Rangers just wanted a good backup catcher to Jonah Heim in case Jonah Heim just is unable to find that offense again, and they end up having to non-tender him next year. They'd at least have a major league caliber catcher back there. He had his best year offensively last year. Great pop, home runs, RBIs, OPS, all career highs, but the average will never be high. So the news that I told you guys today was that the Padres are considered a real quote-unquote threat to sign Roque Sasaki. The little secret nugget that I kind of was piecing together is that the Rangers might be playing more chess than checkers with the signing of a Higashioka. And why is that? Because he speaks fluent Japanese after working with Masahiro Tanaka with the New York Yankees. Why is that important? Well, you have a whole bunch of pitchers coming over from Japan this year and next that are going to need a catcher that they can converse with, or at least an interpreter. And to have that battery mate who can communicate with them on that level, not have to go through a language barrier, that's a very advantageous thing for the Rangers to pick up on something like that. So I'm not saying that's the reason why they signed him. I still think the number one reason why they signed him is because they needed another catcher. And he's a very good catcher, great defensive catcher. Offense is a little bit better than what it was in years past, but he's never going to be thought of as a bat-first type of catcher. Catcher's offense, honestly, over the last 5-10 years, has been at some of the lowest points it's ever been in Major League Baseball history. The rare exception was Jonah Heim in 23 when he was the American League starter at the position. Then you see what happened this year. He reverts back to what he's done most of his career, which is a below-average hitter. Adley Rutschman is the exception, not the rule. Sugano, don't forget about him. Exactly. He looked like a stud. Rangers would love to get him. Rangers have a very good international scouting system, not just in the Latin American countries, but in Japan as well. They have a very good system over there. Chris Young goes over there every year, spends some time. John Daniels has done so in years before. Will he get posted? He will get posted. I believe Sasaki is going to get posted around the end of the year, but he will be a part of the 25 signing class. So the signings that have already been made by the teams to give up their bonus pool money for 24, he will not be a part of that. But teams already have commitments to sign with players for 25. Some of those deals might be null and void if they get Sasaki. So you might see a little bit more activity out there than in years past in the international pool of players. But that's kind of the impact Sasaki has. We saw that with Ohtani when he came over, and Sasaki's looking to follow suit. So should be a very interesting case for Sasaki when he finally does get posted. How quickly does he sign? All those kinds of things. But, so many players are coming over the next year or two from Japan. There's going to be more than just Sasaki. And to get a player on your roster that can speak and converse with those players now and have them under contract for next year as well can only help in your pursuit of those guys. So thank you guys for joining us tonight. We'll be live again tomorrow around 9 o'clock. Be sure to join us. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll see you guys again tomorrow night.